today's video, I'm going to share with you a secret to getting full marks in all the AQA reading paper questions. This isn't a clickbaity secret, it is a genuine secret which will change your life if you're an English student, and I hope if you're an English teacher. And it's this: the number of explanations you write is exactly equal to the number of marks in the question. Now, that might seem an extraordinarily simple thing to share with you, especially as this is probably almost definitely not what your teachers are saying, and is also not written down in the mark scheme. Now, I will go into the mark scheme and prove that that is what the mark scheme means, even if it's not what the mark scheme says. So how on earth do I know this? Well, it's because I'm obsessed. And I'll go so far as to say I am the most obsessed English teacher in the country, not just on YouTube. And so let me show you what I mean. Behind me, I've got a range of books I've written as guides to each individual question. This is not a sales pitch. These books might not be for you, but they are there to convince you about the level of my obsession. So to get the information to write those books, I have to go on a secret, and that's a YouTube secret, website. It's a real website that you can find, but it's secret because you can't use it, and you can never use it unless you're a teacher. So what is this website, Exam Pro? Well, what it does is it gives your teachers access to 8 example answers to every single question that has ever been set in this exam. These answers are marked by a senior examiner, and you get the senior examiner comments. So I read literally hundreds of those student answers. What have I done next? I have rewritten them in my own words so that the evidence and quotes and arguments and explanations are exactly the same. And then what I've done is chunk them all up. How many explanations got 5 marks? Oh, it was 5. How many explanations got 16 marks? Hey presto, it was 16. I've done that with every single question, and it works with every single question on the AQA reading papers. That is fantastic news, because it now means nobody needs a different method for each question. The method is exactly the same. It doesn't matter how many quotes you find. It doesn't matter how many methods you find. What matters is the number of explanations about those quotes, about those methods, or about those structural features of question 3 of paper 1. It's always, always, always the number of explanations. Now, some people say, yeah, I'm not convinced, because obviously it's the quality that determines the grade, isn't it? And so I'm going to show you that the quality is just another way of saying quantity. Because what happens is this: if I find a quote and I give 2 explanations about it, that is a higher quality than just 1 explanation about the quote. Stands to reason, doesn't it? So if I have 7 quotes and 2 explanations about each, that is quality. But really, it's just 14 explanations. If I had 20 different quotes with 20 different explanations, the examiner would go, look at the quality of that answer. Look how many quotes they found to back up their ideas. So quality isn't just having lots of explanations about 1 quote. You don't have to do it that way. It's the volume of what you find, the number of explanations that back up what you're saying, that gives you the grade. Still not convinced? Well, let's dive into the actual mark scheme to see why this is true, even though the mark scheme never uses the word explanation. Let's take a quick look at the mark scheme. We're at the top where the grades 8 and 9 are, 16 to 20 marks. When you read through this, you'll see that the word explanation doesn't appear at all. So I've got to explain why I say that's actually what the examiners are looking for. You know, how can that be, Mr. Salles? The word explanation isn't even in the mark scheme. Are you having a laugh? No, I'm not. So let me quickly show you. This column is the one that examiners look at first. They look at your answer and they say, is it perceptive, is it detailed, and does it evaluate? Well, in order to decide that, they're thinking, am I convinced by the explanations? Do the explanations sound intelligent? Are they perceptive? Are there enough of them? That's how I decide if they're detailed. Do they look at different points of view? That's how they evaluate. It all depends on the quality and number of your explanations. This screen capture part of my video actually comes from a course I'm filming on how to get grades 7, 8 and 9 on the language papers. Look out for it in the future. It might be what you need. Then the examiner looks at the second column. So the student shows perceptive and detailed evaluation and will try and interpret what that means. So number 1, they develop a convincing and critical response. Well, what's going to make it convincing? If you have enough explanations to prove your point. What's going to make it critical? If you have explanations which other students haven't necessarily noticed. How do I know it's focused on the statement? Because each explanation refers back to whatever the keyword is in the question. Okay. It has to show perceptive understanding of writer's methods. Well, how will you show your understanding the method the writer is using? Well, you're going to explain what the effect of that method is. It's an explanation. You're going to select a range of judicious textual detail, in other words, quotes. What will you do with those quotes? You will link them to an explanation of what they're showing you. You will evaluate critically. We've covered that. How will you give your opinion about something? With an explanation. So everything in this question is about the number and quality of your explanations. Then the examiner reads what you've written and they have to come up against this bit of writing, which has been written by an examiner, not by a student. So it doesn't sound like something a real student would write. And then they say, well, actually, because of that, this isn't really a model answer, nor is it everything that you'd have to put in a complete response, nor is it giving you the particular content that you need to put in, but it's just an indication of the standard of the level. So if I'm reading this as an examiner, what is my gut telling me is going on? It's this. Are there lots of explanations that the examiner is giving? So here are those explanations rearranged as separate points. You can see that this examiner has given us an answer, a part of an answer, remember, that is 144 words long. That's not long, but it has 8 explanations in it. So in 300 words, you're going to have more than double 8. You're going to have more than 16 explanations if you're as good as this examiner, showing us what the top marks 16 to 20 look like. Is it reasonable to expect in a 20-mark answer that students would write at least 300 words? I think it is. That is what you'd expect of top students. And so this is what the answer actually means. We want you to write loads of explanations. Some of them will be really short like this one, and some of them will be more developed like this one. That's what will make them convincing and perceptive. But it's the total together, how many you've got, which will ultimately decide how perceptive and convincing it is. In yellow, I've highlighted what counts as methods: contrast, animal imagery, simile, animalistic, which refers back to the animal imagery, and imagery again. So you don't need to name loads of methods, and the number of methods is not the most important thing. As you can see, the number of explanations dwarfs it. Similarly, we can see the quotations, which I've highlighted in green. You can see that these two-word quotations can be interpreted as two separate ones, the same here. But so at the very most though, we've got 5 quotes. Again, that is dwarfed by the number of explanations. Not only that, the number of explanations is most likely to equal the number of marks given, whereas the number of quotes won't do that and the number of methods won't do that. It shows that you do not have to quote for every point you make. It shows that you do not have to name a method for every point you make. But this is the final thing that's going to get you the mark. For every point you make, you must offer as many explanations as you can, because it's the explanations that get the marks. So, although that's not what the mark scheme says, it is exactly what the mark scheme does. And that's why I say examiners are looking for the number of explanations, even though examiners do not know that's what they're doing when they apply their gut instinct to these words. But you know, and I know, that's exactly what happens.